Hello and welcome to another Blood Red Morning Bulletin. My name is Emmett Gates and today I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com colleague Dave Comerford. And Dave, we're finally at the end of the international break. It feels like Liverpool haven't played in forever and a day, but we're edging ever closer to Saturday's crunch game against Man City. But we're not going to talk about that yet because we'll talk about that later in the week. But lately Liverpool have been maybe not so much linked, but there has been some connections with Lorient's um, Enzo Lafay. Now, I have to say, admittedly, I don't know very much about the player, but I know that you know a little bit about him, and he seems to be, from the stats I've seen, he seems to be doing, decent numbers in Liga. Um, what's your opinion on the player? And apparently, he's a clone of Jude Bellingham, by all reports. So maybe if Liverpool don't get Bellingham, they could go for Lafay. What do you think of this, and what do you know about the player just in general?
Well, I mean, to start with the Bellingham point, I think what's interesting is, obviously Luffy is, like you say, I mean, we're talking about someone who isn't necessarily a household name, doesn't have obviously the same kind of continental profile that Bellingham does, but is kind of certainly among I think people who are sort of following the French league and people who look at kind of analytics as well, someone who's generating quite a lot of excitement and crucially is into the last 18 months of his contract as well. And as we know, um, as we're seeing with Mason Mount as well, that kind of does drive down a player's transfer value. It does give them a lot of leverage with their club, and it does open up transfer opportunities that clubs like Liverpool can exploit. And I saw yesterday, I think it was, that Lafay has basically said he wants to leave in the summer as well. So it looks like just a case of if his price tag is going to be reduced, then who is it going to be who he chooses to join? And I read a really good article on Liverpool.com by Josh Williams recently, where he basically profiled Lafay and what his kind of key attributes were. And I think the main thing that kind of comes across is how much of an all-rounder he is and how much of an impact he makes on both sides of the ball. I mean, to pull up a couple of stats from the article, he ranks second for tackles and interceptions, but also is fourth for completed dribbles, and that's among every player in the league, not just midfielders. And he's also in the 94th percentile for shot creating actions. So we're talking about someone who can kind of really put up like a high volume of defensive interventions, really, but also is kind of driving his team forward, is creating chances. And the point Josh made with the article was that it would be kind of more of a vintage Liverpool Moneyball signing in terms of, looking at all that data, maybe not being led by the hype as much, but looking at, the attributes that he has. And Josh thinks that he'd be a perfect Klopp player, really, for that midfield, kind of that all-rounder. And I have to say, when I read about him, he does sound like he would be a good fit. It's just a problem, I suppose, for Liverpool is anyone who isn't Jude Bellingham this summer, if he was to be regarded as a Bellingham alternative as opposed to, in addition to Bellingham, then I suppose they're just going to be in his shadow, and the fans probably won't know how to react, really, because obviously you want to welcome a new player with open arms, but also it's going to be a case of kind of ruining the failure if it doesn't happen, and there's certainly a long way to go in that transfer race.
Do you think Do you think there's any feasible chance that Liverpool will actually, go in for the player, or do you think it's just, someone out there is getting 2 plus 2 and getting five out of it type situation?
I mean, you look at the article from Josh, and it's more kind of Liverpool should go for him as opposed to, Liverpool are his white kind of thing. Um, it's And another thing he said was that he'd probably be on Liverpool's radar, given the kind of numbers he's putting up. Like, it's hard to imagine that he wouldn't be, and we maybe just haven't heard it yet. I personally haven't seen too many sort of concrete links. I think there's been a couple, but not necessarily from the sources that we pay most attention to, let's say. But I think it's kind of one to watch, really. I think especially with this announcement that he's looking to leave the club. We'll put teams on alert, certainly. So we might see Liverpool come out the woodwork a little bit with that one. My hunch would be that we'd probably look elsewhere for a Bellingham alternative. I think it would be. I mean, it's interesting because I think in terms of a midfielder who can kind of drive forward but also works very hard defensively, I think Mount is actually the player I'd look at and think he would be kind of an alternative to Bellingham in a way. But everything that we sort of see suggests that it's kind of Mount in addition to Bellingham is what Liverpool would really want. So I think they'd probably go for somebody else. And I think I wonder as well if, along the lines of what I said before, you don't necessarily want to see the club guided by this, but given the extent of the backlash that we'd see if Liverpool don't get Bellingham, I think they'd maybe feel under pressure to deliver someone who has got more status, really. Because obviously this Bellingham transfer would be kind of a blockbuster one. I think they'd want to kind of make up for that with someone who is, going to generate plenty of excitement. And if you are going for someone who's a little bit less well known, then maybe you're not going to get that. And I think given how we see Liverpool operate now in recent windows, I think they are kind of maybe less kind of completely hard-headed, pragmatic business than they used to be. So I do wonder if they will be kind of sensitive to the kind of fan sentiment and things like that. So it's interesting anyway. I mean, it's all speculation at this point, but like I say, we'll see how it develops.
I think you make a really good point there, but I think I think at this point Liverpool have been linked to Bellingham for so long now. If they didn't get him, they would need to bring in Mbappe to kind of appease the fans because the Bellingham links have been going on now. It feels like about 3 years, and they would need someone like an Mbappe level to kind of smooth it over with the fans. But of course, we know it's not going to happen. But something that did happen was Scotland's 2-0 win against Spain last night. I have to say, admittedly, this was a shock to me when I saw the result. But it was a good win by all accounts, and Andy Robertson was right in the thick of it. I know Rodri, Man City's Rodri, came out after and kind of criticised Scotland, and Robertson kind of bit back and said, the Spanish players were kind of rolling all over the floor a bit. What did you make of the result? Did you see any of the game, and what do you think of Robertson's comments?
I didn't actually see the game, but I mean, absolutely massive result. I mean, it's one of them where I think, from the qualification campaign standpoint, it's sort of a huge bonus really for Scotland. I mean, it's probably one of them you're looking at it and saying, maybe we can get a point, but if we lose, we're looking at kind of other matches. Was it Cyprus they played at the weekend? And one, I think maybe those are the kind of games you look at and say, right, let's kind of rack up our points there. But so a big step towards qualification, even though it's still early in the qualification phase. And from Robertson's standpoint, the last time he was at a major tournament, I think Scotland went. I mean, they got that draw with England, but they were a little bit kind of maybe disappointed to make more of an impact. So it would be good for them to kind of get another opportunity. Obviously, with the last Euros being delayed, that this one's kind of creeping up already with being the summer after next. So it'd be good to see him, I think, from a career standpoint, being there as well. So we'll see how they get on in kind of subsequent international breaks, I suppose. And yeah, it was just I think he had a really productive break. I mean, I always get the sense with Robertson that he's probably his country's best player. I think it's fair to say, but maybe that kind of pressure has sometimes, affected him, or maybe it's led to more scrutiny from people in Scotland. But yeah, you get the sense that he hasn't maybe been as loved as you think he would be, given the quality that he has, being the nation's captain and things like that. So for him to kind of produce, I think he got 2 assists against Cyprus, an assist last night as well. You know, you look at that and you think those kind of performances are what maybe could endear him more to those fans, especially if it makes a difference in kind of the spectre of qualification and a continuation, really, you'd have to say, of Robertson's great season. I think, you know, he's closing in on double figures for assists for Liverpool. Obviously now when you look at kind of the international picture too, he's passed that mark. So he's had a really good campaign. It was a crucial actually that he didn't get injured yesterday with Tsimikas picking up a rib issue when he was with Greece. So thankfully he's come through that unscathed. We'll see what happens with the severity of that Tsimikas problem. But hopefully, yeah, he can carry that momentum from what is probably the best. I mean, unless I'm missing anything, probably the best kind of results of his international career. Hopefully he can carry that momentum back to Liverpool and finish the season really strong, because from what we've seen so far this year, I think Tsimikas only started 2 Premier League games. There's going to be an awful lot of reliance on Robertson to be kind of the man in that position, starting virtually every match.
Yeah, you're right. Hopefully he can, as you say, bring that momentum back to Liverpool, starting with City on Saturday. So Dave, thanks for joining me. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.